Potentially, if it's the other way around, maybe. Maybe Magnus didn't give the chance. Maybe he resigned. I didn't actually see how the game actually ended. He might have resigned before a draw offer to come through, just not given the opportunity to put any mental questions there. That could have possibly happened, but it was a real dynamic end to the game. Very unsurprising. Can Magnus now bounce back with the black pieces?
Yeah, that is the issue. I mean, on the subject, I just wanted to give my thoughts. I just think it's part and parcel of internet chess and the players developing, black establishing a triangle formation with his pawns. And, I have to say, I have to read you a tweet from Casey Grows Nose, who actually says, Magnus was late, fell asleep at the board, one blunder, then mouse slip. No draw offer. No way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, many people saying no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, if he'd have played one F3, no way would he have got a draw offer, And he did turn up late to the game. You could argue that's not entirely correct. But, OK, we're into the second game now, so Magnus needs to prove something now.
Yeah, and Magnus himself, I don't think he would want that generosity from his opponent.
No.
He wants to, he wants things to be decided on the board anyway. So, OK, a few moves into the opening. Nothing too special has happened. It did start out as the Queen's Gambit, but as Yamanka mentioned, Black has kind of established this triangle formation with his pawns. Black's pawns in the centre, making that triangle, and it's just rock solid. We did see a trade of dark-squared bishops. Meanwhile, Magnus back to taking a power nap, potentially. And there we go. Definitely not full of energy, even after that first game. And, OK, Magnus has a healthy position. He's just castled his king as Black. White needs to develop his pieces, but this is the type of position where you will need energy later on as Black, just to equalise, let alone trying to win this game. It's very much White with a small space advantage, the better pawn structure. So, OK, Magnus perking up there again, opening his eyes and maybe ready to move. I'm expecting the Black, OK, rook or knight to come to the centre. Black's pieces over there. They just need to... I keep saying wake up, but I can't say that anymore. They just need to join the action. They need to join the game. Yeah. And, White's bishop or queen now most likely to move.
Now, Liem, with the white pieces in this game, getting a win in that first game, a little bit surprisingly after that mouse slip. With the black pieces, do you think his mentality in this game is to just go for another win, to go 2 points up to the world champion?
I mean, I think he's just going to play with, he doesn't need to go crazy because it's the world champion. I mean, if he loses this game, that first game is irrelevant. So a draw, good result, really. He gets a bit closer to the finishing line, and that's $7,500, which is pretty tasty.
Oh, yeah.
So just play the position, don't take too many risks, and see what kind of mood Magnus is in as well, because, it is over to him now. He's really got to prove it. He's going to be very upset after losing that game. So maybe give him the opportunity to blunder.
Yeah, and we saw time and again last season on the tour that the kind of professional approach, once you take the lead, no matter what the colour, is to just kind of play safety first, and not necessarily meaning you're playing for the draw, but just kind of playing sensible chess, and as Simon says, wait for your opponent to do something, wait for them, because they are behind, to kind of take the risks, and then you can maybe take your chances if they do come. But yeah, especially with White here, what Liem's doing is just really solid, really sound. He's put his piece on good squares. And Black is the one with this last pawn trade, and now with this move, Black is the one trying to equalise, trying to trade off pawns in the centre to make things symmetrical. And yeah, Liem's just done a very sensible job here. He's castled his king as well now, so White is ahead in development. And after this pawn trade, White will take back with his knight, most likely. He doesn't want an isolated pawn in the centre. And still a move or two before Black gets organised. And a nice move there by Magnus, just getting ready to bring his knight out to challenge White's knight in the centre of the board. It's very balanced in general, but zero risk at all for Liem right now.
Yeah, and that's what he kind of wants. I totally agree with you both. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. As chess players, we love patterns, and we saw it in the Charity Cup and the Air Things Masters. Players couldn't actually recover when they were 1 point down, because the opponents always kind of locked the position up and they played very solidly. And I mean, I can even think of the Air Things Masters, the match between Liem and Magnus. I mean, Magnus won the game and Liem could make no headway.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest improvements I probably had was when I was young and I was looking at the games of Grandmasters in English tournaments. And you can note that these older grandmasters, they'd often win games by doing nothing. And that sounds like a very strange thing, but they'd wait until their opponent make the mistake. And they wouldn't even try to do many things. They'd just sit there. They would play very risk-free. They wouldn't try to attack because it weakened their position, and they just wait and wait and wait. And the pressure will build in these match situations on Magnus, because at some point he has to win, so he has to take a risk. So I think that is certainly the right approach.
Yeah, old man chess, Simon. That's exactly what I try to do nowadays. I try to do nothing and just wait for my opponent to come at me.
But you do nothing very well.
Yeah,
you do it very, very well. So,
it's a decent strategy. It does work.
You know, I had the grandmaster do that to me once. He just literally shuffled the pieces, and it was a bit of a mind kind of. I want to. Some bad word came out, but it was really mind-boggling, because every time I was like, why is he playing like this? And I ended up burning time on the clock. And in the end, I was the one that lost patience, and I did something, and of course, backfired on me big time.
Yeah, and there's this famous example, right, of one of the greatest strategic players, one of the greatest positional players of all time, Ulf Andersson, and he just did nothing for 15, 20 moves. Actually, it was against Ulf Andersson, where his opponent, was it Mike Basman, did nothing for 20 moves. And then, eventually Ulf just got frustrated and lashed out. And
that was at the Hastings tournament, I think, and Basman's one of the real mavericks of English chess, and the St. George is actually one of his openings, really, him and Tony Miles, so it's quite appropriate to mention him. And I also remember that was a quiz question at the Reykjavik pub quiz. They showed a position, and Magnus guessed the two players, guessed the year.
No way.
Yes, and it was a bizarre. Yeah, he did. He guessed everything, which shows his incredible memory. Impossible question to get. The weird position, which two players, which year.
And he guessed Mike Basman, who is one of the legends of British chess, but maybe not so well known outside of the UK.
And Magnus, of course, knew the answer.
Wow,
no one else
incredible.
did. Just Magnus did. So it was crazy.
Yeah. So if I ever write a book called The Art of Doing Nothing, then that game will feature. Maybe this one as well. Who knows? And in this game, there have been a few developments, but nothing too special. It's actually very reminiscent of the early stages of the previous game between these two earlier today, at least the opening stage. It was basically identical pawn structure. It's completely symmetrical right now. And just pieces flying off the board. Bishops have been traded. A set of rooks have also left the board. Now black has lined up his queen and rook against the white bishop. I'm expecting that bishop to be defended by white's rook. There we go. And finally, a threat actually against the black queen. White's bishop was threatening to jump out the way with a check, hit the black king, and then the black queen would have been under fire from white's rook. So you never want your queen opposite your opponent's rooks. That's why Magnus stepped back. And look at this, Liem. He's actually barely paused. Magnus actually with more time than he started with, but both players just trading off all the pieces. The Hoover has come out, and all the rooks have come off. A set of bishops. It looks like Liem just very happy to consolidate his extra point from earlier today. Yeah, I think heading towards a draw. Yeah, it certainly looks that way. I mean, it's always a bit dangerous to do that, I find, but when you're this caliber of player, they can do that in these positions. I mean, there's no weakness. And again, go back to Ulf Andersson, one of the most interesting things he said to me, I was playing the same team as him, and I said, well, I always try to play the best move in the position. And he said, I don't. I was like, well, you're one of the best players of all time. What do you mean? And he goes, I just try to play a move that doesn't make a mistake. And I thought, oh, hello. Well, it's a totally different way of looking at the game. Rather than trying to find the best move, he tried to play moves that didn't make any weaknesses, and that was his style. And I found that really interesting as approach to the game of chess. So yeah.
I have to say on that subject, I was actually on the same team as Simon and Ulf Andersson, and it was so wonderful to be like watching these two players who have completely different styles. Simon, let's say he's a quite optimistic attacker. Likes coming forward, very, very dangerous. And Ulf is very much safety first. And if he gets a little niggle, we would kind of get together after the team finished the games, and we would kind of analyse, we would play chess, and
they would just completely disagree.
No, it was like some meeting of minds. That was the most wonderful thing.
I remember a great incident from that, because Ulf really is one of the top players, Scandinavian players of all time. He's a legend, and I sacrificed my queen for some dodgy compensation in some game. We looked at the game afterwards with some wine, and Ulf, he could just calculate so well. He saw all the tactics. He saw them much quicker than me. And he's just pointing out all these ideas. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, he's never playing like this, but he could play like that. That was the point. And he was quite a unique and very nice, brilliant player. So, yeah.
Wow.
That's the thing, actually. It's a myth that positional players don't calculate or that they don't do tactics, right? But they use their calculation skills and use their tactics to prevent their opponent's ideas. And, yeah, it's a bit like another individual sport, tennis. Simon would be the guy who's going for a winner with every shot, trying to win the point immediately. Ulf would just be trying to get the ball back into play, just wait for the opponent to hit it out. So.
That's an interesting, yeah.
It's a very nice analogy. Yeah. But that's one of the beautiful things about chess. I mean, not much is, I have to say, happening in the game here. We'll come to it in a minute. But one of the beautiful things about chess is you can put your personality onto the game, and that shows at the higher level you get, and I think that's a really beautiful thing about the game. You can sort of see that in the moves that are played often by players.
Yeah, and the reason we haven't been talking too much about the moves is because not too much has happened. Queens have been traded off. It's just an endgame now with bishops and knights, but it's still perfectly symmetrical pawn structure. Black can block up either side of the board later on if he wants to, and yeah, it's minimal hope for either side to win this game. It's simply impossible to create a passed pawn, and if you can't create a passed pawn, push forward, promote, make a new queen, then no real chance of winning this one.
Well,
both kings have centralized, and yeah, it's just very much headed towards a draw.
And that is good news for Liem. He won the first game today. Let's take a look at the results in all the matches in the first games of today. So Liem is up by 1 point against Magnus Carlsen. Remember, a total of 4 rapid games to decide each match. Jürgen van Forest, he got a win against Erik Hansen and is up by 1 point. Pragnananda, he's just having such a good start to the tournament. He won his match yesterday, and he won the first game today against Shahryar Mamedyarov. Duda and Giri, they played a draw in the first game, and all the matches are now ongoing with game 2. And I guess by the tone of your voice that you're maybe expecting this one to
fizzle out
Yep.
into a draw.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the game is in really calm waters at the minute, and I don't expect it to last too much longer. And it will be settled peacefully. And I think it's a perfect time to show your selfie
Yay.
from Dmitry Stanislav, who is watching the show from traditional Cyprus, which is a lovely island with amazing nature
and weather.
There we can see it. Yeah. But we're also having good weather in Oslo
We are,
as well.
yes.
So normally I'm quite jealous, but here, you know, it's great to be watching in beautiful nature.
What is the weather like in Bergen now, where you live?
It's actually not bad.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been really, really sunny. And I have to say about Bergen, it's Norway's second city. And usually the weather is just rainy and it's horrible and grey. But when it's beautiful weather, you feel like you're living in paradise. It's a stunning place.
So those few minutes every year when the sun is shining in Bergen, it's paradise.
The rivalry coming through.
Go Oslo! All right, we do have a few moves on the board in this rivalry. Is it fizzling out, David?
Yes. If you look at the pawn structure now, it's pretty much as blocked as it can be in the center of the board. I slightly prefer Magnus's position if I had to choose, just because White's pawn in the middle of the board slightly blocks in his bishop, but it's not really a significant factor right now. We could see White's knight come and give the black king a check. White could push some pawns on either side of the board, but still no way to imbalance things. And just look at the clock times for both players. They've barely paused, and that means that they both know what's about to happen. A draw is imminent. Here we go, it's a check. Black's king has to be slightly careful where it goes, maybe. But once it finds a safe square, I'm expecting the players to play a few more quick moves, maybe trade another set of pieces off, and then just repeat the position to make a draw. I'm not sure whether they can offer draws or whether they will offer draws. Normally, that's a sign of pride. You don't want to be the one showing weakness and clicking the draw offer button. But yeah, it's just a...
This time in the arena, they can actually just look at each other and go, hey, draw. Yeah, that's kind of unusual.
Just wink at each other, yeah.
Shouldn't it be like a peace sign or something?
Yeah, actually, in over-the-board chess, especially when I was young, when I was playing people who we didn't share a common language with, the common sign to offer a draw is kind of like that. Yeah, just offer the draw, and then the opponent will nod, and then...
Well, sometimes you can even offer a draw just by a smile. You know, I remember playing a grandmaster friend, and we just looked at each other, and we just kind of laughed and went, you know, and then started analysing the game. And but it kind of like it didn't occur to us until a few days later that, you know, we actually hadn't offered a draw. We just kind of agreed.
Yeah. But could it sometimes happen that it's some confusion and...
Definitely. I remember there was a Russian grandmaster and he was played at Hastings and he just had a permanent smile and it was really weird. He's like the Joker, and you look at him and you're like, why is he smiling? What have I done? What have I done? It's like, oh my God. And it's like, yeah. Don't know if you know the guy, but I won't mention his name, but it was really disturbing.
Russian grandmaster?
A Russian grandmaster, yeah. He just had a permanent smile. And it's like, why? And you're just like, 5 hours smile.
Oh, wow.
Just really loves chess.
That is...
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Or the mental game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, Magnus has been playing the mental game in, so far in this tournament. Yesterday, playing an odd opening to put Jan-Christoph Duda off. Today, arriving a little bit late, falling asleep. But in this one, it's calming down. Magnus with the black pieces, a draw here must be sensible. Yeah. And then going all out for the win in game 3.
Yeah, the position we see on the board right now, it's very much the type of position where you could imagine a player falling asleep, to be honest. So yeah, it's strange that Magnus fell asleep earlier when it was maybe the start of a more exciting game. Now it's just really not too much happening. And body language, if you look at the two players, Liem, I mean, he's so stoic, right? Just never breaks pose, never seems to panic. Even in the last game where for a moment or two he was maybe in a bit of trouble, never really breaking sweat. Magnus much more expressive. Magnus at least looks fresher than he did maybe an hour or two ago. And yeah, okay, pushing a pawn here, not changing the nature of the position at all, really. And yeah, black might push a pawn, black can just wait with the bishop.
So we will follow this game until it has finished, because we want to follow the players out to the lounge to see if they give some reactions to Sverige. And after that, we're going to jump into another game, of course, in this round.
Yeah. And whilst the players are just moving their pieces around, I'd like to ask both you and David a question from Luffy, who says, if you had to play e4 or d4, which is moving the king's pawn 2 squares forward, or the queen's pawn 2 squares forward for 1 year, which one would you pick?
Well, I mean, Eva's cool with me. I mean,
would you just roll the dice and
I'd
go?
probably just roll the dice. I mean, they're both great moves. I mean, I think in general you should generally stick to the same opening when you're learning. But as you get better, you can sort of adapt to other openings to increase your knowledge. Especially nowadays, how chess has developed. When we were young, you should stick to the same opening, play the same ideas. But with the information available now, it's much quicker to learn things. I mean, maybe for me, I'd have a change and play the king's pawn for a year, because I normally do the other pawn just to mix it up a little bit.
Okay, and now I'm going to say the exact opposite. I normally, well, at least when I was younger, I used to play e4, but I'll say d4 just to mix things up a bit. And it's funny you mentioned rolling the dice as well, because when I played a recent tournament, I literally couldn't decide my first move. So I rolled the dice and it came up 1 d4. So I had to play d4 the whole match.
Was F3 on the dice?
F3 wasn't on the dice. Okay. Only sensible moves, Luckily, there was only space for 6 options on the dice. And yeah, I played d4 and the match went pretty well, so...
Yeah, I've actually tried some dice chess and just played around with some different rules where you play a move, you have to roll a dice to see what piece you move, and some stupid variants. But nothing beats traditional chess, though.
Yeah, no, talking about dice chess, it's a good one actually to play when you're playing against a beginner, because you just roll the dice and it tells you what piece you have to move. Sometimes it's
quite interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay, and meanwhile, a couple more moves. So actually, Liem going for maybe a more ambitious option than I thought he would, just pushing a pawn forward, harry the h-pawn, may be a potential winner of this game. If you look at all the pawns, that pawn that has just moved is the most far advanced pawn on the whole board, and therefore the pawn actually in front of it, if you look at black's h-pawn, it's potentially a weakness. If you could imagine white's knight jumping and trying to grab it later on, then white's h-pawn will run through. Very quick pass pawn there. The problem for white is that the knight, no matter where it jumps into black's half of the board, it will get eliminated by black's bishop. So if you look at actually all of the minor pieces, the bishops and knights, white's bishop is controlled by the black knight and vice versa, and also white's knight is completely controlled by the black bishop. Meanwhile, Magnus pushing this a-pawn forward, actually saw on his computer screen just a few minutes ago, he was itching to play this move earlier, but he delayed it, and he changed his mind a couple of times. Now he has pushed this pawn forward. It's just going to completely lock up the position, I think, in the next few moves.
I think the only way either side is going to win this position is by a big blunder, you know, a mouse slip. Yeah. And this move now is locking it up more. Slightly dangerous putting your pawns on the same kind of square as your opponent's bishop. It's the only thing you have to be a little bit careful of. But you can see there, I think again by Magnus's face really that he knows this is a draw, and neither side's. I mean, if they blunder here, it'd be pretty amazing, really. Yeah. So
it's hard to imagine anything too drastic happening now. And yeah, as you mentioned, Magnus's face was like, come on, let's get out of here. Let's take a break. And it's actually interesting who this will favour more. The quicker game. Maybe Liem wants to keep Magnus at the board for longer. Maybe he knows Magnus is a bit tired. Maybe he'll just keep the game going and going and going and not click that draw button anytime soon. Magnus clearly looks like he wants to get out of there.
And play that mental game right back at Magnus, basically.
Exactly.
That would show some, I'm not going to say that, but it's going to show something.
I've done it before, you know.
Some tennis.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, that's all right.
No, but why not just keep your opponent at the board? It gives them less time to prepare the openings. And Magnus has white in the next game. Maybe give him less time to prepare.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Oh, okay. It's going to be a little bit interesting to see now. Will Liem try to, play on here?
Commentator's curse. He'll probably click draw off the button anytime soon. But it's just a different strategy. Liem is quite a respectful guy in general. He'll probably just think, OK, let's just make the draw. Fair result.
Totally dead now, isn't it? Now they've locked the queen side as well. They've locked up. There's no pawn breaks. I mean, if you're going to win a position like this, you have to really have. I think
it's going to come.
Yeah.
It's going to come.
Free fight.
White is just going to shuffle the king backwards and forwards. Black is going to do the same.
Yeah. All of the minor pieces are on their perfect squares, so the kings are the only ones that can really do anything.
That's when Magnus wakes up, of course. But is that it?
Magnus does win endgame sometimes, but he's not going to win this one.
I thought he's had his head. Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Wow. He's gone for something.
Okay.
What?
Wow.
Risky move there by Magnus.
And Liem does have a reaction.
Yeah, you didn't. I mean, this is avoiding a draw because he could have really moved his king back, and they could have mirrored each other, done a free-fold repetition, taken a draw. But he's actually trying something. Looks really risky. Yeah. Probably doesn't change anything, but still.
Well, how could Liem take advantage of this? Is there anything you're seeing?
Well, the first thing he'd look at is actually capturing the bishop, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. He could take that bishop in two ways. White could capture it with his own bishop or with the knight. And either way, eventually Black's pawn structure would have to change. Black would have to recapture with his pawn on the next move or the move after. And rather than this kind of complete blocked up symmetry that we see, suddenly the pawn structure will change. And that's why we said there's risk involved. Black will end up He's going to end up with an isolated pawn. But the reason it's still a draw is because anytime the white king comes forward, the black king will actually come forward itself and block it off. We're just going to see a dance of the kings now. Still nothing to be done. Magnus calculated it. It looks super risky, but that's just a standoff. It's almost, yeah, I mean, it's just nothing to do.
Rumble with the kings here.
Yeah, and we're going to see the position repeat.
Yeah,
they're going to dance a little bit more, and there we go. It is a draw.
All right, eventually a draw between them in game 2. That means Liem, after 2 games, is still in the lead in the match. He won the first game. Magnus